Hello, and thank you for joining us from our studios in Israel. I'm Aaron Porras, here with ILTV's Morning Briefing. In a rare and interesting manner, the Israeli Defense Forces released to Twitter on Tuesday a map of southern Lebanon which points out all the known military infrastructure belonging to Hezbollah. Hezbollah is an Iranian-backed terror organization, and the map, showing just the section of Lebanon along the northern Israeli and western Syrian borders, is meant to display Israeli intelligence gathering capabilities, as well as make the case for possible future strikes. The map, which was declassified for the above reasons, illustrates that while Hezbollah has indeed been embroiled in the Syrian civil war, they haven't forgotten about future conflicts with Israel. Dotted across the image are 85 civilian villages, heavily mixed between weapons warehouses, infantry positions, underground infrastructures, rocket launchers, anti-tank positions, and command posts. The deliberate mixing of military installations with the civilian population is what drove the IDF caption below the tweet, simply reading, "This is a war crime." To prevent continued arms stockpiling in the region, Israel has admitted to dozens of strikes on weapons and other military convoys en route to the terror group by way of Syria. One such strike was just last week, and in April, the Israeli Prime Minister promised to continue targeting the smuggling of game-changing weaponry.
Our top story for this half hour. Syrian military sources say Israel has launched rocket attacks targeting a military airport near the Syrian capital Damascus. The ground-to-ground missiles were reportedly launched from inside the occupied territories and hit Mazeh airport west of Damascus. The rockets triggered a fire, but no casualties have been reported so far. The Israeli military has not commented on the report. It was the second such attack by Israel over the past week. On November the 30th, Israeli jets fired 2 missiles from Lebanese airspace towards the outskirts of Damascus. And for more on that story, we're now joined by our correspondent, Muhammad Ali, who's with us from the Syrian capital, Damascus. Muhammad, always questionable timing in these attacks carried out by the Israeli regime, most notably over the past weeks, where the Syrian armed forces have been making major gains against the terrorists in the country.
Yes, exactly. The General Command of the Syrian Army and Armed Forces said in a statement that Israel launched at 3 a.m. Damascus time several ground-to-ground rockets that hit the perimeter, actually, at the vicinity of the Al-Mazeh airport in Damascus, causing no casualties according to the Syrian army, but it triggered fire in the area. Now, according to this statement, the Syrian army went on to say that this attack comes in the framework of the desperate attempts of Israel to boost the morale, the collapsing morale of the terrorist groups at this timing. We know that the Syrian army currently is advancing more and more in many parts of the country, mainly in the city of Aleppo, the eastern parts of Aleppo, almost taking control of the entire city, and also in Damascus countryside, where the Syrian army forced many terrorists in several areas like Khan al-Sheikh, which is close to the occupied areas, Israeli occupied areas, and other areas like El Tel to leave towards Idlib, which makes the Syrian army in control of more and more areas around Damascus.
The USS George H.W. Bush aircraft carrier, a massive ship nearly as long as the Empire State Building is tall, launched the first jets to carry out American airstrikes against ISIS in 2014. Today, more than 2 years and over 16,000 airstrikes later, the USS Bush and its crew are once again making preparations to rejoin the battle against ISIS. However, this time around, the USS Bush will be headed into a much different war zone. With ISIS still holding out in the besieged city of Mosul, the Russian aircraft carrier, the Admiral Kuznetsov, patrolling the waters off the coast of Syria, and boats belonging to the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps harassing U.S. ships in the region. The USS Bush, with a crew of approximately 5,000 men and women and carrying a complement of 65 various aircraft, is expected to deploy following the holidays in early 2017.
This is is a film that is made by John Pilger, and it investigates and reveals this massive build-up of American military forces around China. So what's being reported in the mainstream media as China's ambitious expansion, its reclaiming of land in the South China Sea, is in fact a response, because according to Pilger, what's not being reported is that China itself is under threat. So this pivot to Asia that President Obama talked about in 2011 has resulted in 400 US bases encircling China, essentially, bases in Guam, elsewhere in the South China Sea, in South Korea, in Japan, forming what Pilger calls in this film a noose around China. And it's a noose that is made up of missiles and warships and even nuclear weapons.
The winner of the Nobel Peace Prize, President Barack Obama, has committed to trillions of dollars to our nuclear arsenal. He's committing trillions of future dollars to war in space. And we need an enemy for all this money, and China's the perfect enemy.
The threat of China is becoming big news. The media is beating the drums of war as the world is being primed to regard China as a new enemy.
Our first president, George Washington, said, if you want peace, prepare for war.
Canada has agreed to send troops to Latvia in the new year as a part of a NATO mission to deter Russia from invading the country. Although many Latvians do not believe Russia is interested in attacking their country and are afraid the NATO saber rattling is going to be counterproductive at best. RT's Alex Mihailovich is in Toronto tonight, where he's been following the story. Alex, I'm curious, how many troops or how many resources is Canada sending to Latvia? And also, why is the country so keen on doing this?
Well, you know, Canada wants to play its part in NATO right now. The strategy is that every NATO nation should be given about 2% of its GDP towards defense. Canada's under 1%. As we know, President-elect Trump wants everybody in NATO to pump that up. That's not happening, but Canada's trying to play its part as much as it can. So it's sending 450 troops to Latvia. It's going to cost the nation, Canada, about $350 million to do. It's a mission over 3 years. So the Canadian troops themselves will be the commanding force there. There will be about 1,000 troops altogether, NATO troops, including troops from Albania, Italy, and Poland. 1,000 troops in Latvia to do what? That's the big question. So playing a part in NATO is one thing. Many Canadians believe that we should be putting our money someplace better than that, possibly to peacekeeping missions, something that I believe and many other Canadians believe we are traditionally known for, not saber rattling right next door to Russia. So, the excuses always are, well, Russia's building up its troops presence along its borders. That's its borders. That's borders it's defending. And when you have NATO sending people like this right to its border, what do you expect Russia to do? Just imagine that was going on right across from Alaska and on Russian territory. If we saw this massive buildup of Russian troops, what would the States do? You'd send more troops to Alaska. So we know that this is really more pressure, it's that NATO creep thing happening towards Russia. Latvia is being used as a pawn, and Canada is playing its part in this saber rattling that we're talking about.
NATO head Jens Stoltenberg said the economic sanctions imposed on Russia over the Ukraine crisis must be kept in place in order for Moscow to meet its Minsk ceasefire commitments. He also said the international community must continue to pressure Russia to respect its obligations as the security situation in eastern Ukraine remains serious. Stoltenberg said this after NATO foreign ministers met their Ukrainian counterpart in Brussels on Wednesday. The 28-nation European Union, of which 22 are NATO members, imposed economic sanctions on Russia after a Malaysian airliner was shot down over rebel-held territory in eastern Ukraine. That was in July 2014. The measures are now up for renewal amid doubts about their effectiveness and cost, as well as concerns that US President-elect Donald Trump may take a softer line on Russia.
MIT's Computer Science and Artificial Intelligence Laboratory says it's taken a huge step forward in predicting the future. Computers were shown 2 years of raw video to help them understand a present ongoing situation, several of them. In fact, they're shown one still frame and asked to predict its outcome. For example, we have a handshake prediction. Here it's shown a photograph, it was correct, a handshake happened. Then what about a kiss? The photograph was shown. She went in for a kiss. It was correct on the part of the computer. Now then the computer thought Michael Scott was going in for a handshake. Instead, he forced a high five. So that was incorrect on the computer's part. Well, the computer then creates a visual of its guest. Now, 20% of video predictions by the computer appeared to be realistic and correct when shown to humans. The video it creates, though, is a bit wobbly, not like the TV shows we saw. Now, in previous attempts, computers looked at an image and then tried to predict the next frame. Based on that, they then wanted to predict the next frame, but like a game of telephone, it got off track pretty quickly. If this makes it out of the lab, it may keep you safer, like safety mechanisms on your car. But in some cases, it might put some living, breathing being out of a job. In Washington, Lindsay France, RT.
What we are launching is a new facial recognition technology which works in real world on real people, but also on real people on any medium like print, magazine or TV. Yes, you can blame George Clooney on the street and get all publicly available information about it, but in a very interesting format. His movies, what he's done, what he stands for. So the creator profile is very easy. It actually doesn't use your Facebook photos or Google account. Immediately after your face is recognizable, you can add a lot of content to it. You can add YouTube videos, you can add your curated Spotify list. It could be very relevant in dating because strangers meet all the time in interesting places. You don't have badges, you don't have business cards. You really can exchange a lot of instant information about someone and put it in your phone itself. This kind of engine would play a very, very big role to give you information about whatever drives your curiosity.
Apple's frustrating Maps app will be getting a makeover to take on Google. In an effort to catch up with Google Maps technology, Apple Maps will be stepping up their game by using drones. Bloomberg reports Apple's jump to the next level will require aerial robots as well as indoor navigation technology. Nowadays, Apple makes use of vans equipped with camera sensors, but these are expensive and require a lot of manpower. Drones instead are smaller, light, and can fly around and get in areas that vans can't. They will examine street signs, track changes to roads, and keep an eye on construction areas. This information will then be reflected on the Maps app, providing accurate information. Bloomberg reports an Apple Maps new feature may include views inside buildings and improvements to car navigation. The Federal Aviation Administration granted permission to Apple to fly drones for commercial purpose, restricted only during daytime and requiring licensed pilots to operate the equipment while keeping the drones in their line of sight. For Viewer, I'm Maria Mercedes Galupo.
Some of the biggest internet companies in the world are joining forces to fight terrorist content online. Facebook, Microsoft, Twitter, and YouTube said in a joint statement they will create a shared database of flagged terrorist content. With the use of unique digital fingerprints, otherwise known as hashes, they can track violent terrorist imagery or terrorist recruitment videos or images that violate content policies. By having access to this combined database, the tech giants hope to identify potential terrorist content more efficiently on their respective platforms. The companies say the database won't contain any personal information, and flagged content won't be automatically removed from each platform. It will be up to each company to review the content in question and determine if it violates its terms of service. The program is expected to begin in early 2017.
Trump is calling it a great honor. It's not the first time he's been featured on the magazine's front cover. A cartoon figure of his face was on the cover twice this year. In both instances, Trump's face appears to be melting. Those covers featured the captions "Meltdown" and "Total Meltdown." Brian Walsh is Times international editor. He joins me from New York. So how does Donald Trump go from being a total meltdown to Times Person of the Year?
Well, I'd say for one thing, he does it by winning the election. And part of the reason why we selected him for this position really is that he does have an amazing amount of influence. There's no real other figure in 2016 who had as much influence as he did, for better or for worse, again, than Donald Trump. And the fact that he was able to win the election despite experts and others in the press saying he couldn't do it. The fact that he's able to do that on his own, the fact that he's representative, I think, of a global movement of populists, nativists, anti-elitists, all sort of put him in this unique and very influential position.
On Monday, 2 transgender people and a lesbian law school professor filed a federal lawsuit in North Carolina to challenge a new law that blocks local governments from passing anti-discrimination rules and requires transgender students to use bathrooms assigned to their biological sex. The law was approved last week by the legislature and signed by Republican Governor Pat McCrory. Georgia Republican Governor Nathan Deal just announced his plan to veto a similar law in that state. Georgia had received a heavy backlash from businesses large and small for its protection of discrimination. The law in North Carolina has not received the same amount of public backlash as the Georgia law, nor a similar one passed in Indiana last year.
A controversial abortion bill called the Heartbeat Bill is now sitting on Ohio Governor John Kasich's desk. Ohio state lawmakers approving legislation banning abortions the moment the heartbeat of a fetus is detected. That usually happens about 6 weeks into a pregnancy. If Governor Kasich signs the so-called Heartbeat Bill into law, it will be one of the toughest restrictions on abortion in the nation.
Now, usually the law is set out by the Supreme Court says that after the period in Roe v. Wade, that's when states can legislate what they want to do. But the fundamental question for that issue has never been answered. When does life begin?
Right.
We've
People
never
feel differently about that.
Well, but usually in this society, in a secular society, you convene science to do this. It used to be that when your heart stopped, you were dead.
Right.
Science evolved and was marshaled to evolve. That brain activity is what you have to look at.
The birthplace of General Motors, Flint, Michigan is now a symbol of industrial decline, with high poverty and crime rates. And now a new danger. It's water. Melissa Mays, once a healthy mother of 3, blames her family's recent health problems on the city's water.
It was in the fall of 2014 we started to lose our hair, all 5 of us, and we started developing rashes on our arms and our face, and it wouldn't go away and it hurt. So, you know, we'd ask questions and they'd tell us, oh, the water's just a little harder, it's fine.
Hey guys, I want you to come in here and get some water.
But it was far from fine. Her children's blood tests revealed high exposure to lead. So how did Flint's water supply become contaminated? To save money, the city stopped pumping water from Detroit and started pumping it from the Flint River. The problem is it's a lot more corrosive, damaging Flint's aging pipes and leaching lead into its water supply. The state didn't acknowledge there was lead in the water until September, a year and a half after the switch. And they didn't ask for government help until last week.
Hi, kitty kitties.
Not a lot of time for small talk.
Lunches.
For Phyllis Shaughnessy this summer.
Good morning, doggies. Look out.
She's too busy.
See, there they all are waiting.
Every weekday this summer.
There's only 2 of you today? All right. Have a happy day.
She's been delivering lunches to kids in Grays Harbor County.
Okay, sounds good. It's a depressed area with no business, no industry. There's no work. There are no jobs.
When she found out the school districts in the North Beach area were not offering free or reduced lunches this summer, she started fundraising.
We're working all summer with no pay. It's all volunteer because we don't have funds for pay.
Using the Green Lantern Tavern's kitchen, every morning, volunteers pack lunches with non-perishable items.
Okay, top ramen, fruit snacks.
And then Phyllis and a handful of other drivers
Good morning!
deliver the sack lunches. She hands out about 90 every day.
Is that all you got today is 2?
Yep, the 2. Thank you very much.
You're offering the children hope and love and a lunch. They need to know that somebody cares.
Anytime we actually see a blue car, they're like, oh, the lunch lady. I'm like, no, that's not her.
You got it?
The parents look forward to the daily deliveries too.
It helps a lot. There is free lunch up at school, and that's what all the kids are on, the free lunch and breakfast program. And so in the summertime, that bill goes way up.
This was an adventure the first day I came down here.
Things will slow down for Phyllis when school starts next month.
Are you ready for school to start?
Yeah.
But friends she's met this summer
I'll be bringing school supplies pretty soon.
have inspired her to keep raising funds to feed these children over weekends and holidays and next summer.
It's my job. We're all put on the earth to do something. Better to give than to take.